Hey y'all, quickly jumping in before the video starts to say I will once again be attending MomoCon from May 21st to May 24th at the World Congress Center in Atlanta, Georgia. So if any of you are present and happen across me at any point, feel free to say hi. And if you are around on Sunday, be sure to attend my panel when cartoons call out their audience. Can you tell I failed graphic design in high school?
The Wild Thornberrys?
It's a movie version of a cartoon family you can see for free on TV.
But they stretched out the plot and added a wildebeest from the hood.
I am so there.
Greetings and salutations everyone, my name is Jake and welcome to my Mind Palace, where I dust off various shows and movies from my past, talk about my connection to them, and determine how well they hold up all these years later. This is part 2 of a multi-video series chronicling the life and times of Nickelodeon's The Wild Thornberrys, in an effort to understand why it isn't as fondly remembered as other Nicktoons from that era. Previously, we covered seasons 1 through 4, or what I consider the original run. We explored the show's origins, got to know all its main characters, and revisited plenty of notable episodes to see what made its storytelling so unique and ahead of its time. And in this video, we'll be covering all the projects that released in the final year of the franchise's life, where everything falls apart. That's sure to be a lot of fun. When we left off, I said the very next thing we had to look at was the 2002 theatrical movie. However, that was a bit of a lie, as there is still one other piece of the series we have to go through beforehand. One thing Nickelodeon used to do back in the day when adapting shows for feature films was create an episode meant to directly lead into the movie. Famous examples include the season 5 episode of Rugrats that reveals Dee Dee is pregnant and the journal from Hey Arnold, which was supposed to follow into the Jungle movie, but then that was cancelled and wouldn't actually come out for another 15 years, but even when it did come out, they still led on from that cliffhanger. So to build hype for the movie, they made a special that was meant to introduce some of the new characters and set up a few of the storylines the film would continue. And then Nickelodeon, being Nickelodeon, decided not to air those episodes until 5 months after the film released. Produced as episodes 85 and 86 of the series, Sir Nigel is the second Wild Thornberrys special, immediately following up the origin of Donnie. And while it is technically counted as part of season 5, tonally it doesn't quite fit in with the rest of those episodes. But it also feels too far removed from the previous seasons for me to label it part of the original run, which is why I've always felt it's better to look at it as something separate, since it is a prequel to the movie. Written by Sheila M. Anthony, this extended story sees the family arrive in Nigel's, and unfortunately my homeland, the UK, where he has been summoned to Buckingham Palace to receive a knighthood, something that has always been a dream of his, as we previously witnessed him fantasizing about it in the episode Bogged Down, when he was hallucinating after being stung by a poisonous stonefish.
Hello! Deeply honoured, Your Majesty. I've always dreamed of a knighthood. Yes, Sir Nigel Thornberry, Knight of the Round Table. I say, old chap, ever heard the one about the 2 elephants and the rhino?
In the days leading up to the ceremony, the family are staying with Nigel's parents at their manor in the Scottish Highlands, which is only a short 10-hour drive away from London. But then again, it's not like the Foundation would pay for them to stay in a hotel. Immediately from the opening of the special, something feels off. And I'm not talking about the thinner outlines and more saturated colours. The writing itself feels different in a way that's difficult to fully pin down, as if the writer had taken a break from the series and was trying to remember how these characters are meant to sound.
My dad is Sir? Sounds pretty stuffy for someone who loves living with his family in the wild.
Wild is vastly overrated. Believe me, I know. I've eaten insects off a stick.
The family arrives and we meet Nigel's wealthy parents, Cordelia, played by Lynn Redgrave, and Radcliffe, who is also played by Tim Curry. While Nigel's father is as jolly and eccentric as his offspring, and is where Nigel got his desire to protect animals, upon first impressions, Cordelia makes Sophie look like Mother of the Year.
Is this the proper way to raise children? It's not the way, but it's one way.
While Debbie and Darwin quickly take to this life of luxury, Eliza is less than thrilled as her grandmother is especially stifling towards her, and it's only about to get worse as Cordelia has an announcement.
I've heard from the Duke of Clevewood, who's dear friends with the dear friend of the Chancellor of Oxford University. Because of the knighthood, they intend to offer Nigel a rather prestigious professorship. You shall all be settling down in England permanently.
Eliza immediately goes to inform Nigel, who reassures her not to worry. Jumping ahead a few days, Eliza is finally able to escape so that she and Darwin can go exploring, which is where things take a turn, as Cordelia points out that Eliza has no human friends, forcing Nigel to consider potentially taking the professorship, completely ignoring the fact that Eliza has plenty of human friends. Ben, Dieter, Jin, Arioka, Miguel, Lena, Ling, Juka, and Zola. She's practically a social butterfly. And these are characters who previously would be mentioned if someone ever tried to claim that Eliza only ever spends time with animals. There was a way to still get this point across without erasing them from existence, because while Eliza does have many friends, they are all scattered across the globe, so she doesn't have a consistent social circle, which could be what concerns Nigel. But it's much easier to say she's never had any human friends, so that's what they do. And while this is a fairly major retcon, I do enjoy the idea of this storyline since it picks up on something present throughout the original run. As early as episode 7, there was always this subtle idea of the family giving up the life of world travel and settling down somewhere permanently, which was positioned as Eliza's worst case scenario, having to attend a normal school and no longer getting to talk to all kinds of animals.
I was afraid I was going to have to tell your parents that you may be better suited to a more structured school environment.
What?
A regular school with desks and bells and no alligators.
You can't. You can't. I'd hate it.
Multiple times it was used as a threat against her, which hangs over the entire series.
If you so much as take one step outside this camp area, I'll send you back to live in the States.
But while Eliza has always been able to find a way to convince her parents not to make that decision, their uncertainty has only grown stronger with time, as Nigel and Marianne have become increasingly aware of the dangerous things Eliza does when they aren't looking.
What were you doing next to that snow leopard? You could have been hurt.
Mom, I've been chased by animals a lot bigger and faster than a little snow leopard. I mean, they weren't that much bigger.
This makes their actions in this special, as well as the movie, feel like a natural progression and payoff to something that was set up from the beginning.
I always worry we're leaving them unprepared for the real world. It was our decision to live this life, not theirs. Except, I love this life.
Throughout part 1 of the special, a threat has been building in the background of Radcliffe's neighbour, McTavish, a fox hunter who has been caught laying traps on the property and later leaves out a poisoned dead sheep, as Eliza tries to help a family of golden eagles from falling victim to it. She also sees this as a perfect opportunity to remind the family what they're about, as they all pile into the convey so they can find the sheep before it harms anything. However, a storm causes them to be struck by a mudslide as they all must evacuate, and during all this chaos, Nigel reveals that he's been offered the professorship at Oxford and he might take it.
We have more immediate concerns.
And that's the poisoned sheep. You may be too busy with teas and professorships to care about animals, but not me!
Eliza, come back!
Part 2 picks up with Eliza finding the sheep moments following McTavish capturing one of the eagles, which she's told about by a fox. She finds the eagle, named Connell, in a stable and works to get the key needed to free him, where they all barely escape. Meanwhile, Darwin has been left to look after the eagle's chick, leading to the pair reuniting the family.
Will we not see you again?
I don't think so. Come on, Dar.
Having now befriended the eagles, the Thornberrys are able to film them, which was one of the things they needed to do on this trip. Though I could have sworn there was some other reason they were here.
The knighting!
Oh, yes. The knighting. When is that?
In about 14 hours, 33 minutes, and 12 seconds.
Nonsense, Debbie. Buckingham Palace is in London. That would mean we'd have to drive all night.
We're gonna have to drive all night.
While the family quickly gets ready for the long trip ahead, Nigel finds a moment to talk to Eliza about the professorship, which doesn't go well.
I just want you to think about it is all.
I wish you'd never gotten that letter about being knighted. It's ruined everything.
The following morning, they all arrive in London, where they face multiple setbacks, though taking advantage of the Convey's amphibious mode, they use the Thames to ensure they arrive just in time, where Cordelia gets a nice dose of karma.
What do you mean the Lord Chamberlain didn't put my name on the guest list? That's impossible!
Well, Mum, it just isn't here. I've checked twice.
Well, check again.
Sorry.
Come back here this instant! You shall be hearing from my solicitor!
Though her, Radcliffe, Donnie and Darwin are able to get in by borrowing some Palace Guard uniforms.
Oi there! What's this? Harris? Didn't I tell you to get a shave?
He overslept. Bit of a late night, don't you know?
Too many pints, eh? Likely. Look at them eye bags. Well, go on in then. And mind you keep that ruff clean.
Nigel is knighted in this honestly quite moving scene that really does encapsulate his entire journey as a character, with the main point of the Queen's speech being his unwavering integrity.
I.W. Sir Nigel Archibald Thornberry.
Though this whole experience only serves to remind Nigel of why he became a naturalist and how important the family's work is, which makes his choice clear.
Oh, Mumsy, we're Thornberrys, built to roam the world and seek out adventure.
Thanks, Dad!
The status quo is firmly back in place as the Thornberrys set off for Africa. Though this wouldn't be the end of Cordelia's attempts to uproot Eliza from her life, as the biggest adventure the family would ever embark on was just around the corner. Sir Nigel is remarkable in just how astonishingly okay it is. It does hit the same beats you'd find in an episode of the original run and tries to do some interesting things with the characters, but there are a lot of problems that result in it simply not landing as well as it could have. In my breakdown of the original run, I kept insisting people were misremembering the show when they said things like Debbie has a solely miserable life, Eliza is a selfish character, or that the series is boring. But now I'm thinking when people say that, they are remembering this special in particular. Because the dialogue is lacking that sharp wit of the older episodes. They completely forgot that Debbie secretly enjoys travelling with her family while making her out to be an undeniable victim. And though she would make her anger over the situation clear, the Eliza I know would never fully turn on her family to a point where she is praying they miss the knighthood. It carries the vibe of something like the direct-to-DVD Recess movies, where it sort of resembles the series, but with enough small changes that really throw you, especially if you watch them right after the final episodes. While the primary conflict is a good one and was at the core of the series, the method they take in getting there is rather messy and has to retcon a large part of the show's history to make it work. But it does still carry some of that same charm, and there remains a handful of shining moments that reignite the love I have for these characters.
When I was a boy, I used to pretend I could talk to animals, and they could talk to me.
Really?
I couldn't, of course. Not really.
Oh, you love animals, don't you?
Oh, indeed I do. The only thing I love more is my family.
It's kinda unfair trying to compare it to something like The Origin of Donnie, because it was never going to be that. It's a passable little diversion that does a decent job setting up where things will go in the movie, even if it can't hold a candle to what came before and what was supposed to come right after.
In truth, we make a happy family, no for geographical. We are the main model for our friendly private natural.
The Wild Thornberrys will be right back on Nickelodeon.
Say yes with Nickelodeon and help protect your world. Hey guys, I learned something totally sick about my hair gel. The stuff inside keeps your locks rockin', but the container is so 1990s because it can't be recycled. Like, the Earth's natural bacteria and stuff can't break down some plastics, so they just sit around in the ground or in a lake or whatever for, like, forever. I mean, animals try and live in places we dump our stuff. Ew. Most plastic used goes into making packaging for, like, food and toys. So not recycling is so wrong. We should all cut back. Like, don't bother with those little plastic bags if you buy fruit and veggies in a store. And try to buy things that's made from recycled stuff or can be used again. Small things save the world in a big way. Log on and say yes to helping save the planet with Nickelodeon, the channel that cares. Recycling is so this century.
Now back to the Wild Thornberrys on Nickelodeon.
By this point, the Wild Thornberrys had enjoyed 4 years on the air, which was about the standard for a cartoon at the time. However, for many reasons that we'll get into later, the sun was definitely beginning to set. But in the early 2000s, when you had a cartoon as successful as the Wild Thornberrys was, it was practically an obligation that it make the leap to the big screen. And in 2002, fans received the emotional and visually stunning cap to the golden age of the series with the Wild Thornberrys movie.
And that was just the beginning of my biggest adventure ever.
Directed by Jeff McGrath and Kathy Mulcahy, with a screenplay by Kate Boutillier, who had all been with the series from the pilot and season 1, the Wild Thornberrys movie was the third theatrical adaptation of a Klasky Csupo series, following the first 2 Rugrats films. While the family is once again stationed in the African continent, Eliza reunites with a family of cheetahs so she can play with the cubs, promising their mother to look after them. But when they stray too far, one of the cubs, Tally, is captured by poachers as Eliza risks her life to save him, something her family witnesses, including Nigel's mother who is visiting. Having reached the tipping point over their daughter's constant reckless actions, Nigel and Marianne give in to Cordelia's pressure and send Eliza away to a stuffy London boarding school, with Darwin following by sneaking away in her luggage. When Eliza is visited in her dream by Shaman Mnyambo, the one who granted her the power to talk to animals in the first place, he tells her Tally is alive and there is still time to save him. Thus she and Darwin must find a way to get back to Kenya by themselves, embarking on their greatest adventure yet, one that will challenge Eliza in ways she never imagined, as to fix her mistake, she must risk losing everything she holds dear. Let's get this out of the way up front, this film is a sight to behold. Word of warning, I'm going to be saying a lot of names in this section because so many people had their hands in crafting this work and I want to credit as many of them as I can. I'm also going to try my best with pronouncing them, so please bear with me. In the past, I've talked about what makes a visually worthwhile movie based on a cartoon, and also voiced why I don't like it being boiled down to the characters have shading on them now, because it discredits the work that actually goes into something like this, and the Wild Thornberrys movie is one of the best examples of just how impressive this kind of adaptation can be. Production designer Dima Milanichev, who was the character designer on the pilot, has not only translated but built upon the already iconic look of the series, helping to give this world an infinitely greater sense of depth and detail that feels far more immersive than was ever possible on TV. A lot of that is credited to the rich and expansive backgrounds designed by Bradley J. Gake, Mariana Tankelevich, Bismarik Datian, Bella Carrick, Leonardo Quinta, Jay Ryu, Sigitas Sniras, and Krista Sergiotis, which capture all these locations beautifully. From the nearly endless African plains to the neon-lit London Underground to the bustling market in Nairobi to the lush jungle, all of which have immense scale, highlighting how small and vulnerable the characters are in these environments. The more natural tones and darker palettes used by the background painters Olga Andreeva, Atak Borean, Marissa Cacciolo, Kevin Gallagher, Yelena Tokman, and Alex Zabolotsky really harken back to the early episodes when the series was animated on cells. But it's not only the backgrounds. Often when taking a cartoon to the big screen, they tend not to mess with the characters too much, How they look in the show is pretty much how they look in the film. With this one though, they did add some extra details, like showing the fur on Darwin's arms or making Eliza's glasses actually transparent. The outlier in this is Shaman Minyabo, who not only receives a complete and frankly much better redesign, but an entirely different personality because his depiction in the flashback episode The Gift of Gab would not have suited his narrative role in the film, where he's this wise mentor to Eliza. The modified characters from the series and all the new players in this tale were the work of Patrick Deney, Steve Fellner, and Bill Schwab, who elevate that iconic off-kilter Klasky Chupo art style with even the purely background characters all brimming with their own personality. Something I value a lot, especially in theatrical animated movies, is the world feeling like a real lived-in place instead of merely the backdrop the characters stand in front of. Something the series always excelled at, but this film accomplishes it masterfully. The movie taking place in so many distinct locales provides an excellent canvas for the talent of returning series composer Drew Newman to shine and show off his versatility, which has always been an invaluable asset to the series, especially now that he has a full orchestra to work with. For a show that could take place literally anywhere in the world and put so much focus on other cultures, the soundtrack needed to constantly adapt, utilizing different instruments or soundscapes to create this sense of authenticity. And now that we have a single story that travels between continents, we can fully appreciate how he creates a distinction between them while ensuring the score feels cohesive. Like the piece titled Sneaky Mission, which plays when Darwin and Eliza are about to leave the boarding school. It mixes in the very light, standard instruments from the previous handful of scenes with this strong percussion section that grows more dominant by the end, signifying the characters making their way back to Kenya. The score is also elevated by the occasional use of vocal tracks, performed by the Majuba Choir, which further adds to the grandeur. While a lot of the production crew were people who came from working on stuff like the Rugrats movies and hadn't been part of the original run, there was still plenty of creatives from the show there to ensure the ship was being steered in the right direction. Outside of the film's directors and writers, you also had Eric Casemiro and Terry Torrin as part of the fairly extensive team of producers, episode directors Mark Risley, Sylvia Quellin, and Frank Marino joining the team of sequence directors. Charlie Adler continues in his position as the voice director, and then there's the involvement of the many artists from Sunwoo International, a studio in Seoul, Korea that had worked on several episodes. So far, we've been talking about things that make this a good movie based on a cartoon, but what makes it not only a good Wild Thornberrys story, but one warranting this change in presentation? The way many TV shows turned motion pictures answer that question is by ramping up the intensity, placing the characters in a greater sense of peril. You can't exactly do that with the Wild Thornberrys though, because pretty much every episode features the characters in mortal danger, meaning this movie has to work a lot harder to set itself apart from the series, which is already fairly intense. So instead, this film opts to significantly raise the emotional stakes, taking advantage of the show's main concept in a way that hadn't been done before. Eliza's ability to talk to animals is what the show revolves around, but this power comes with a responsibility, that she can't tell anyone or else she will lose her gift. And then you watch 80 episodes where the show pretty much does nothing with that. You'd expect this to be a constant source of tension, like it is in any other show about the main character trying to keep a secret, but the consequences of losing her powers if she ever tells another human don't really weigh on Eliza, as there are numerous examples where she seems to kinda forget that.
Watch this!
Maybe I should go.
That's what I said! That's exactly what I said! I told her to go in Dolphin, and she understood me!
In the entire original run, there is exactly one episode centered around Eliza trying to keep her power hidden, and that is episode 25, Dances with Dingoes, which, surprise, was also written by Kate Boutillier.
You talked to them, and they understood you!
I think you've been in the sun too long. Want some water?
In this story, Debbie witnesses Eliza communicating with a pack of dingoes and runs off to tell their parents, only to become lost in the Australian outback. However, with the help of some Aborigines, Eliza convinces her sister that it was all merely a dream. But the strange thing about this story is that Eliza doesn't mention the possibility of losing her gift. She's more worried that if it gets out, then scientists will want to study her. There's only one other instance where Eliza actually shows concern over someone finding out she can talk to animals, and that's in an episode we've already looked at, A Shaky Foundation. It's a brief scene where the sound-activated camera Tom installs on top of the convy catches Eliza talking to Darwin, which momentarily causes her to panic, though it's quickly swept under the rug.
What's going on here?
I mean, hi.
Kids, pretending she's a monkey. Monkey, monkey, monkey.
Because in the grand scheme of the show, Eliza not being able to tell anyone about her power isn't there to be the focus of stories, it's there to justify why she can't solve an episode's problem by going to her family.
Let's go get your parents.
And what? Tell them I know these pandas because I talked to them? No matter how I try to explain it, I'd have to tell them my secret.
In fact, you could likely count on a single hand the number of times it gets reiterated that if anyone finds out, she will lose her ability.
Can't you just tell her that you've checked with me and it's okay? Oh, can't tell the secret because then you'll lose your powers to talk to animals, which I have to admit includes me.
Exactly.
The few people who have learned of Eliza's gift, the Aborigine and Jane Goodall, did so by watching her and Darwin and connecting the dots, meaning Eliza didn't reveal it herself, so it's still technically following the rules.
I'm pretty observant. That's my job after all. And I'd say you two have an almost magical relationship, wouldn't you?
Early into the movie, we have a moment with Darwin and Eliza similar to what we've seen before, though something about this interaction feels different.
Sometimes I wish I could just tell them I talk to animals.
No! Then you'll lose your power and we'll never be able to talk again. How will I know what Debbie's saying about me?
Calm down, I won't break the rule. I promise Shaman Minyambo.
Once Eliza makes it back to Kenya and has a brief confrontation with Debbie while stopping by the convy, her, Darwin and Donnie trek through the forest and unintentionally find the poachers named Sloane and Bree Blackburn, whom Eliza encountered earlier in the story when she jumped off a moving train to help an injured rhino, now discovering they were in fact the ones who shot him. Eliza finds Tally right before they are all captured, but during all this, Debbie has been having her own subplot where she makes a new friend named Boko while tracking down Eliza to retrieve Donnie, where she is then taken hostage as the poachers threaten to throw her off a cliff if Eliza doesn't reveal how she knows so much about their plan when no other human does, leaving her no choice.
Eliza! Stop! Wait! I'll tell you! I know these things because I can talk to animals.
The supernatural force taking back Eliza's gift is enough to scare Sloane and Bree away, freeing the kids as they can now escape downriver while the reality of what just happened settles in for them.
Darwin, come on! It's really gone.
Let me ask you a question. What do you think is the most important relationship within the Wild Thornberrys? You could easily argue it's Eliza and Darwin, since they have the most screen time together. Or you could say it's Eliza and Nigel, because they're at the centre of the most poignant episodes. But it isn't either of them, it's Eliza and Debbie. Their contrasting personalities have driven the conflict of countless episodes, but we've also seen them come together plenty of times and develop a deeper understanding of each other. And those rare heartfelt moments between the sisters are more impactful because of how much they both have to get over for them to happen, even if they are still always filtered through Debbie's attitude.
You know when I said there's no sister geekier than you?
Yeah?
Well, maybe there's a couple who are geekier.
Thanks, Deb.
Episodes like Only Child, Blood Sisters, Lost in Foundation, On the Right Track, The Kung and I, Dear Diary, Pack of Thornberrys, and Hello Dolphin prove their relationship is the beating heart of the series, and the movie gets that even before we reach its darkest hour.
Here's what I need for you to get me in London. CDs, boots, t-shirts. Basically, anything cool.
don't forget.
The other thing you need to understand about their relationship is that the reason Debbie is often so cruel to Eliza is because on some level she resents her little sister for all the amazing things she constantly does and how their parents respond. All of that has been leading to this pivotal scene that kicks off the explosive third act. Eliza is devastated over no longer being able to talk to animals because it means she has no way of stopping Sloane and Bree, who have put up an electric fence in Tembo Valley, which they are going to scare a large herd of elephants into charging at during a solar eclipse, killing them all while Eliza feels utterly powerless to do anything about it, truly doubting herself for perhaps the first time. And Debbie, also for the first time, is able to be entirely earnest in comforting her, without even a hint of sarcasm.
I'm just an ordinary girl now.
You? Eliza, ever since you were a little kid, you dragged home birds with broken wings and creepy toads and stuff. You didn't have special powers then. You just cared. Trust me, you were never ordinary.
The encouragement of her sister is all Eliza needs to try and help the elephants, regardless of whether she has powers and no matter how futile it seems. Shortly before this, the rest of the family arrives on the scene, but aren't able to stop the explosives in time as the elephants all begin charging towards the fence. It's the most dire the series has ever gotten, with both the visuals and the music aiding the suspense as Eliza struggles leaping from elephant to elephant trying to make it to the front of the herd, eventually managing to save them by remembering how at the start of the film she learned you can force an elephant to turn around by nudging the back of its ear.
We did it! Let's get out of here.
Now, there is something about this movie I'm not really a fan of, despite it having some nice ideas and creating a few good moments. And that is the implication that Eliza has some kind of magical destiny, which is the reason she was given her powers. The point of Eliza isn't that she's the chosen one, she's just a child who cares deeply and wants to help. Her powers were not bestowed by fate, they were a reward for her kindness and love of all animals.
The spell could only be broken if a human really cared about me. But they figured, who would like a gross, disgusting, smelly animal?
Oh, I would.
You were the first!
Retconning it all to be part of some grand plan kind of goes against all that. But only slightly, since the core message of the movie is that Eliza is a hero with or without her powers. One aspect of this change I enjoy is how it leads to a discussion the film has over whether Eliza is using her gift correctly. The idea that she could be doing more than simply conversing with the animals, setting up how as she gets older she could use her powers to make a real difference. Having Darwin be the one to challenge her on this is extremely powerful because he has been by her side every step of the way, growing more exasperated with her reckless impulsions and witnessing the times where she has misused her gift, with this movie showing him reaching his limit.
Eliza, no! If those awful people see you again, they'll hurt you. And I'm not going to let that happen.
And all of that makes his calling her out after they've been captured feel very cathartic.
What more do you need? The shaman gave you a gift. Use it!
Darwin, please!
You know what I think? You don't know what to do with your powers!
Darwin!
And the movie concludes with Eliza proving that she doesn't need supernatural abilities to help others because her powers may have helped her as far as communication, but her bravery and determination are why she has been able to do all these incredible things. Things that she would have done even if she never had her gift. She would have still tried to stop Kip from tearing down the forest. She would have still returned the Ai to his nest. She would have still saved the otters from that oil spill. And she still did everything to stop the poachers because she doesn't need powers to try and do the right thing.
You will regret this!
I don't care! What you're doing is awful!
Sloane throws her into some rapids where she is soon saved by Shaman Manyabo while the poachers are brought down by the elephants. And seeing all the good she's done without her powers, Eliza is granted them once again.
There is one condition. About your sister, how well do you think she can keep a secret?
Eliza reunites with Darwin and her parents, then returns Tally to his mother right before Debbie calls her back to the convy as everything returns to normal. Well, close enough.
I don't know how I'm gonna keep this secret of yours.
Well, you have to. I kind of agreed to a condition when I got my powers back.
Uh-huh.
You can never tell anyone my secret, because if you do...
Yeah?
You'll turn into a baboon.
A baboon?!
The film is not perfect. While Nigel and Marianne have some great scenes at the beginning with Tim Curry and Jodie Carlisle delivering exceptional and grounded performances as usual, I do feel like the film doesn't really know what to do with them after Eliza leaves for England. This hurts Marianne more because Nigel still gets a great line here and there.
Dad, have you completely lost your ability to recognize sarcasm?
I'm not sure I ever had it, Deborah.
But since her role in the story is to be a worried mother, we don't get much of that dry sense of humour that made her so entertaining in the series. There's really only one instance in the entire film where we are treated to that side of her.
Debbie, just how long is this sulking gonna go on?
Another 35, 40 minutes. Then I'll start up again tomorrow.
Well, get some rest. I know it must be draining.
Cordelia and Radcliffe receive more to do in this story than she does.
She'll be fine, Marianne. They all will.
Well, how do you know, Colonel? And don't say because they're Thornberrys.
No, because they've been raised by you, and quite wonderfully, I might add.
Radcliffe is right.
Donnie is also fairly superfluous and kind of doesn't do anything the entire movie if you don't count him showing up in a scene to start dancing. The way that Debbie, his favourite person in the world, is moments away from being thrown off a cliff and he does not try to intervene whatsoever. They clearly didn't know how to use him in any meaningful way despite that never being a problem before. But these minor issues do little to detract from this overall masterpiece that should be considered the gold standard for cinematic adaptations of cartoons. The Wild Thornberrys movie is not only a fantastic and visually stunning film on its own, but a tightly crafted love letter to a wonderful series that builds upon many of its best elements. There are a bunch of references to episodes. When Debbie is listing a handful of Eliza's escapades their parents don't know about, she alludes to events from The Dragon and the Professor, Catch a Tiger by the Tail, and Dances with Dingoes.
Do you know that she once fed one of my protein bars to a Komodo dragon? And back in wherever land that was, she rode a Siberian tiger? Oh, and ask her about the time that she was dancing with a bunch of crazy dingoes.
Above Nigel and Marianne's bed, we can see photos of Sophie and Frank, as well as Tyler. While impressing the other students with her stories, Eliza mentions hanging out with a polar bear in the Arctic, likely referring to Nanook from Polar Opposites, and also swimming with the whales and dolphins, referencing Song for Eliza and Hello Dolphin. By Debbie's bed, we of course see Desperodine posters, and even the t-shirt Debbie got a job at a diner to buy during the B-plot of Polar Opposites, but also Boys at Play, an Australian band the family went to see at the end of Quality and Quantity. And I don't know if this one was intentional, but the multiple alien stickers on the wall are potentially an allusion to her story from Show Me the Bunny, in which she believed Donnie was abducted by aliens after reading some old tabloid. The shark cage Debbie tries to stick Donnie in, only for the tables to turn on her, is the same one we see in Hello Dolphin. There's a moment where Bree refers to Donnie as Eliza's little brother, literally the only time his adoption is referenced after it happens, and it's by one of the villains. The green watch Debbie gives Boko is the same one she bought in Sir Nigel, fully confirming that special was always intended to take place before the movie.
It's pouring out there, and this watch is only waterproof up to 3 feet.
Oh, makelele, Nini.
That's pretty cool, huh? And it's waterproof for up to 3 feet.
But those aren't the episodes that had the most influence on the movie, as this story is once again built off Iron Curtain with the final appearance of Jomo, and by extension is also another follow-up to Forget Me Not.
I went up against poachers myself once, to save an elephant. Remember?
I remember.
And now Eliza has had her own Rebecca-esque experience, showing both how much she's grown over the series and that she is truly following in Nigel's footsteps.
I don't know, of course, but I swear she's thanking you.
I think so too, Dad.
If it's been a while since you last saw the movie, I cannot recommend it highly enough. Maybe just stop watching at the 76-minute mark for, reasons.
These furless primates you see behind me are part of an untamed subspecies best known as the Thornberrys.
The Wild Thornberrys movie will return as Summer on Nick continues.
Ah, two of the stars of the Wild Thornberrys movie in their natural habitat. Observe nature's natural rivals. At first, they exhibit aggressive behavior, both staking out their territory. But then, a common bond is formed. Each Thornberry drinking their own flavor in their own way. One pink strawberry mustache, the other chocolate. Ah, the call of the wild. Isn't nature grand?
The Wild Thornberrys movie, rated PG. Only in theaters December 20th. Got milk?
We're back with more of the Wild Thornberrys movie on Nick.
Following the movie's decent run at the box office, grossing 60 million on a 20 million budget, the Thornberrys would return to TV for one more batch of episodes, which would be grouped with Sir Nigel and a holdover from the original run to create the 5th and final broadcast season.
What's that supposed to be?
A project for my art class. Not that you know anything about art.
Doesn't look like you do either.
Let's quickly refresh ourselves on where Season 4 and the movie left these characters. After years of being told she's too young to do anything, Eliza has achieved her greatest victory by saving hundreds of elephants from poachers, reaffirming why she was given her powers in the first place. In reaching his breaking point with his best friend's reckless behaviour and calling her out on it, Darwin has helped Eliza realise that she can be doing far more with her gift, as she has finally started listening to him. Debbie has grown closer to her little sister as the pair have developed a much deeper understanding and appreciation for each other, their dynamic permanently being altered now that Debbie is also in on Eliza's secret. After being adopted, Donnie is now an official Thornberry, and with his mysterious past being solved, we can stop wondering about the Jungle Boy's origins and start focusing on this new chapter in his life. Meanwhile, Nigel and Marianne are dealing with the fact that their kids are growing up, with Debbie maturing into a responsible young woman and Eliza proving she is more capable than they've given her credit for. In many ways, the movie is a finale. It's a natural conclusion to so much of what the show was, illustrating how all these characters had changed and hinting towards what comes next for them. It is very much an ideal stopping point, and had that been the case, I don't think anyone would have been discontent with it. Like I said while discussing the origin of Donnie, what more is there really to do with these guys? But that ending is such a disruption to the formula we followed for 80 adventures that you want to see how all these changes will unfold and what they'll mean for the family going forward. Having a handful of episodes set after the film, allowing us to briefly explore this new status quo, seems like a great idea. So why didn't they do that? The Wild Thornberrys Season 5 centres around Shane G, played by celebrity guest Christopher Masterson from Malcolm in the Middle, a pop star who stays with the Thornberrys while they're in Alaska because his manager thinks it'll help his public image and the foundation believes it'll boost ratings. This sparks a totally not weird love triangle with Debbie and Eliza until Debbie later withdraws from this conflict. The show wants you to think it's because she realised how much Eliza and Shane have in common and that they should be together, but I think Debbie woke up one day, remembered she is far better than this storyline, and refused to keep participating. And that's it. That's all of Season 5. It's nothing but a dull romance storyline dragged out for over 100 minutes of wasted potential. Okay, let's look at the positives. These episodes do try to follow up on the movie and show how Eliza and Debbie's relationship has changed. Episode 1 opens with the revelation that ever since Eliza told Debbie she would turn into a baboon if she ever revealed her sister's secret, she has been having a recurring nightmare about exactly that.
Don't tell us you had that baboon dream again. Why, that makes it the 3rd time.
Hello! The 4th time!
Still pining for our days back in Africa, eh, lovey?
There is some exploration of how this has affected the dynamic, with Debbie no longer having dedicated B-plots and getting more involved in the adventures. Though the series was already heading in this direction, as Debbie becoming more responsible and proactive was part of her growth, but it's nice seeing it go a little further. What else do I like? Donnie is now wearing shoes, among other clothes. That's a nice development. Nigel is still Nigel because Tim Curry can turn anything he's given into pure gold. Every so often, there is still a funny line. Which concludes nearly all the things I enjoy about the season, meaning we have to talk about everything else. Shane's inclusion and the focus on teen romance derail the entire show to a point where it stops being the Wild Thornberrys and starts being As Told by Ginger Goes Camping. I mean, Eliza gets a new design, something I should be on board with because I like that they've made an effort to somewhat age her up a little, but it's distracting when everything they've done only makes her look more like Ginger Foutley. Also, she's not doing this for her, she's doing it to impress a guy. Remember how, in the original run, most of the episodes are driven by Eliza's desire to locate a particular animal, leading to us learning all sorts about them? That's pretty much gone. Eliza talking to animals is no longer the central focus of the show. It's merely something that happens occasionally when the story needs her to do it. In fact, besides Darwin, Eliza speaks to a total of 5 animals across the entire season, with none of these interactions lasting more than a few seconds, and there being only one instance where it played an important role in an episode's conclusion. Somehow we have gone from Eliza realizing she could be doing more with her gift to having her barely use it at all. The season premiere is by and large the only episode in which Eliza still feels mostly in character, where she is driven by her love for wildlife and eventually sees that Shane's affinity for nature is an act.
Do you have any idea what this kind of footage will do for my image?
Your image? You're about to get ripped to pieces by a Wolverine and you're worried about your image?
But then the episode acts like she's in the wrong, that by calling him out on his bullshit and telling him not to do things that will get him mauled by animals, she's being a snob. But it doesn't matter because she still likes him, and the following episodes continue chipping away at everything that once made her such an interesting and likable protagonist. All for a guy who's as boring as Shane G. As much as I didn't enjoy the Tyler episodes, at least he had a discernible personality. Shane is such a nothing character that it makes it all the more irritating watching this once great show trip over itself trying to make the audience buy a romance between him and Eliza. And his very presence pushes everyone else into the background. Nigel and Marianne are not important anymore. They continue to have subplots about filming their documentaries, but nothing really happens in them. It's not like it used to be, where they were constantly doing these dangerous stunts to try and get the best footage. They just kind of film animals while dealing with a few inconveniences here and there. The only time they do get a more complex storyline, it's focused around Marianne being jealous when Nigel befriends their British pilot, who happens to be a woman. Which would be simply cliché in any other show, but then you remember that Nigel is entirely devoted to Marianne and she has never been given reason to worry about his love for her. The show is now using tired marital sitcom storylines that don't fit because it has run out of things to do with these characters. But unlike Eliza, they still remain recognizable.
I've never met a woman who was more like me than me.
A woman like you? That's patently impossible. Why? There's no one in the world like you. That's why I love you so much.
People love to rag on Danny Phantom Season 3 for effectively ruining that series, but at the very least, those episodes still resemble what Danny Phantom is supposed to be. Unlike here, the characters end up in perilous situations, but I wouldn't call them survival episodes. They're in Alaska, but there's hardly any focus on meeting locals or exploring the culture, so they're not really world travel episodes. Animals are present, but they're not important to the stories, despite that being the whole reason Shane is here, so there aren't any environmental episodes either. It's not the worst thing to ever exist. I wouldn't even say it's awful, but it's just not the Wild Thornberrys anymore. So why are we still doing this? The movie opened up so many interesting avenues for where the series could go next, and these episodes take no advantage of any of them. For instance, Debbie and Darwin. Throughout the entire original run, they were only ever antagonistic towards each other, but the events of the movie allowed Debbie to see her sister's chimp companion in a new light.
Wow. Darwin really watches out for you, doesn't he?
Yeah. He's my best friend.
And now that the pair can actually communicate through Eliza, this could have led to them developing an actual connection, and allowed Darwin to grow beyond being such an Eliza-centric character. But since we have to focus on Shane and this forced love triangle story, we don't get any of that. Instead, Darwin stops being relevant because he can't contribute to these stories. The movie sets up that Eliza is finally going to start listening to him, but now she's ignoring him more than ever. Though, to be fair, that was entirely on purpose, as the treatment of Darwin is fully addressed in the episode Clash and Learn. When the family, and Shane, arrives in Bethel, Eliza is excited to meet up with a friend she made online called Kit.
I met him in an online earth science class when he and his family were living up by the Arctic Circle, and me and my family were in Australia.
But when Shane and Kit hit it off, they sort of leave Eliza in the dust, ignoring her much the same way she's been ignoring Darwin since the moment Shane got here, which the episode explicitly calls attention to. When a pack of wolves goes after Darwin, Eliza comes to his rescue with help from the boys, and they finally make up.
I feel bad about how I treated you today. Well, how I've treated you ever since Shane came. See, I just wanted to push my way in with Shane and Kit, only I ended up pushing you away. I'm really, really sorry. You are my best friend, Dar. Nothing's ever gonna change that.
No, of course I forgive you. No.
This is the best episode of Season 5, and the only genuinely good episode of the series after the origin of Donnie, even if it does retread a lot of familiar ground. It was wise to take a break from the romance plot to remind viewers of what was once so good about the show. The strong relationships within the family, and how the characters were deeply flawed but still likable because they could learn from their mistakes. Bringing the focus back to Eliza and Darwin to give them one last heartfelt moment before the series draws to a close. And because of that, this does feel much closer to an episode of the original run than anything else in this batch. We even get somewhat of a conclusion for Darwin's arc, overcoming his intense self-doubt to save everyone from the wolves in this stunning act of bravery. It's a better send-off for the series than the actual last episode at least.
We'll be back with more Wild Thornberrys at the Nicktoons Summer Beach House in just a bit.
People usually make up names for their animals, but since Eliza Thornberry can actually talk to the animals...
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, you speak. You're like us. She can find out their real names. The name of this panda.
What's your name? Shisho.
The name of this polar bear.
What's your name?
Nanook. And the name of this elephant.
I'm Shango. You won't tell anyone about the water coming out of my trunk, will you?
Get to know Eliza Thornberry as she gets to know all the animals on the Wild Thornberrys, only on Nickelodeon.
The Wild Thornberrys at the Nicktoons Summer Beach House continues. Oh, nasty!
Airing long after the rest of the season, on June 11th, 2004, Eliza Unplugged is the series finale to The Wild Thornberrys. We open with the family on the Bem Canal, where Marianne can hardly keep control of the convy in the riptides. Meanwhile, Shane is leaving tomorrow. Oh no, I'm devastated. This means time is running out for Eliza to confess her feelings for him, something Debbie encourages her to do until Marianne interrupts them as they both quickly leave.
Well, just wanted to remind you, we're all invited to a Tlingit potlatch ceremony tomorrow after filming. We're the guests of honor. It'll be a fun way to end our Alaskan adventure. I thought so, anyway.
This leads to the only part of the episode I care about, Marianne worrying that her daughters are growing apart from her, especially as she and Nigel keep attempting to film examples of motherhood in nature, which makes her very emotional.
Eliza doesn't want to talk about stuff with me anymore. She'd rather share it with Debbie.
But that's a good thing, isn't it? The grueling sister wars may finally be over. They're growing closer.
While I grow farther away!
There.
Eliza believes that she's found the perfect spot to confess her feelings to Shane where they won't be interrupted, even if it is dangerous. However, Shane is in a bit of a mood due to the stress of working on a new song and storms off. Eliza is hurt by this as Darwin goes to comfort her, where the pair encounter a bald eagle who introduces himself as the king of the forest.
Why, everyone is in awe of me. Haven't you seen how they carved my face on their trees?
You mean totem poles?
Poles, trees, whatever.
And he imparts some royal wisdom onto her.
I don't cry over anyone. I let them know exactly how I feel.
Brief, but to the point!
Eliza decides to go confront Shane for how he acted, despite Darwin suggesting there might have been a different reason for his behaviour. When Eliza arrives at the combi, Donnie hands her a note informing them that Shane has run away.
Shane is gone!
Not a moment too soon. I mean, really? What happened?
And Nigel is talking with the Tlingit elder about the ceremony that they do to mark an important milestone in the family. Nice to see the show taking a passing interest in what was once a pillar of its storytelling again, but Nigel's mind is elsewhere.
Is everything all right?
Oh, well then. Here's the porridge, plain and pasty. I'm beside myself trying to cheer up my wife, who's feeling her daughters, well, actually one in particular, are growing up and away from her.
The elder says he knows a solution that will resolve this issue with Marianne and Eliza. But who cares about this incredibly meaningful and poignant story about the core family that is the perfect thing to cover for a finale? You all want to know if Eliza and Shane get together. The eagle shows up again and points Eliza in the right direction, finding Shane in the exact spot where Eliza was planning to confess to him earlier. How serendipitous. While everyone gets ready for the ceremony, Debbie distracts Marianne as she and Darwin also leave to go find the pair. Eliza makes it to Shane, who confesses that he's stressed about going back to his life of fame after staying with the Thornberrys has completely changed his outlook.
Being around you has made me look at things differently. And like I said, now my music is different too. And I'm scared people are gonna hate it.
What does it matter what other people think? As long as you like it, right?
Look, it's different for me. You don't have to perform new songs in front of thousands of people. Let's face it, Eliza, we're totally different people.
Not so much, because I want to say something. And even though it's only in front of one person, it's gonna take guts.
Eliza is about to confess, but is interrupted by the tide coming in as her and Shane try to climb back up the cliff, only for the rope to snap. Also, something about Marianne being gifted this incredibly meaningful tapestry by the Tlingit elder.
You are the roots of your family, and you give your children room to reach the sky. Always remember that.
It's so beautiful.
And if that doesn't work, Marianne, you can always use these.
Earplugs?
For when she starts slamming doors and blasting rock music.
Enough of that. What's going to happen to Eliza and Shane? Darwin and Debbie arrive on the scene and work together to rescue them.
If we don't make it...
Don't say that.
But if we don't, I just want you to know that I really, really like you. Like you.
Glad you had the guts to say it. Because I like you too.
However, they do make it, as the sisters celebrate, then rush back to the ceremony before their parents grow suspicious. Eventually, Shane is asked to sing, even though this isn't something he agreed to, as the host just kind of puts him up to it. He performs the song he's been working on, which, and you will never believe this, is about Eliza. We fade to the docks where Shane gives a heartfelt goodbye to all of the Thornberrys individually, which might have meant something had he actually, spent time with any of them. Wasn't the whole point of staying with them to get him in episodes of Animal World?
We want you to think about having him co-host some episodes with Nigel.
Co-host? But he hasn't had any experience with a nature show.
But what better teachers than you and Nigel?
Gee, you're making it sound like we have to do this.
Uh-huh.
And then nothing comes of that because Nigel and Marianne keep going off to film while Shane remains at camp.
Dar, I want you to have these. Very tight.
And in the end, that just leaves Eliza, as Debbie signals to their parents to let the two be alone, but not nearly as condescending about it as she was in season 1.
Dad, I think the little friends want a moment alone.
Eliza and Shane exchange gifts, walk to the end of the docks, and quickly share a kiss before saying goodbye.
I'm never gonna forget any of this, Eliza Thornberry.
That's it?
So, just to recap, The Wild Thornberrys, a show about a girl who can talk to animals travelling the world with her naturalist family, which was one of the biggest cartoons of its time, ends with the main character confessing her feelings to this famous pop star, kissing him, and then he gets on a plane and leaves forever as she watches on the docks completely alone. What a laughably abysmal way to close out this once phenomenal series. I don't like Season 5, and I hope now you can understand why I have been so adamant in keeping it as separate from Seasons 1 through 4 as possible, because tonally and focus-wise, they might as well be completely different pieces of media, and I believe these episodes did significant harm to the show's legacy and reputation. When people say this show isn't funny, or that it's boring, or that Eliza is an unlikable protagonist, or that Marianne and Nigel are neglectful parents who are barely present in their kids' lives, they are remembering Season 5 and applying that to the entire show. And I could say we should simply ignore its existence and pretend it's not canon. But then we have to lose the things that are good about the season. Those fleeting moments that do try and follow up the changes brought by the end of the movie. Debbie's growth and seeing her relationship with Eliza evolve. Clash and Learn is actually a pretty good episode and a worthwhile conclusion to Darwin's journey that I would consider essential viewing. I just wish that stuff was in a season that didn't completely abandon the show's core premise and its central appeal for pointless teen drama that another show on this network, and by the same production company, was already doing way better. Thankfully, Season 5 and its beyond disappointing finale do sting a lot less when you remember that it isn't the last installment in the franchise, as they still had one more shot at delivering a satisfying ending for the series in the summer of 2003. Though, this time they'd have to share the spotlight.
It's just that I have all these feelings I want to express and everything's been kept locked up inside me. Until now. You are the first person I've ever known who really understands me.
I'm glad I can help, Spike.
As I have said numerous times, in the early 2000s, the Wild Thornberrys was seen as one of the flagship shows for Nickelodeon, alongside SpongeBob, Jimmy Neutron, Hey Arnold, and of course, Rugrats. And when you have a pair of successful shows made by the same studio, it's only natural to want to get them together at some point. Thus, Klasky Csupo began working on one of the most important projects in the studio's history, a TV movie in which two iconic series would collide in a massive act of fan service that would be fondly remembered by the audience lucky enough to witness it for generations to come. The Rugrats meet the Wild Thornberrys. Catchy. However, when they began test screenings for this extended special, the reception was so positive that Paramount essentially shelved all the work that had been done up till then and wanted the studio to start over. This time as a theatrical release that would serve as the third entry in what had now become a trilogy of Rugrats movies and the second Wild Thornberrys film. This is just another sign of how massive both these shows and Nickelodeon were at the time, because besides recent studio vanity projects like Space Jam 2, when has there ever been enough hype behind a cartoon crossover to warrant a theatrical release? And they had so much faith that this would be a hit that they didn't even wait for the Wild Thornberrys movie to open, as the crossover would premiere only half a year later, meaning they were in production at the same time. Think about that. The Wild Thornberrys was such a success that they were essentially working on two theatrical movies at once that came out less than a year apart from each other. That is kind of insane, especially considering it took some of the most popular cartoons of all time over a decade or more for them to make a second film. This used to be one of my favourite movies growing up. I had it on DVD and would re-watch it constantly. I mean, I was a Nickelodeon kid. I still am. Literally from the moment I was born, these shows have been a part of my environment. That was in part due to my mother, who often tells me how she would watch shows like Rugrats and Cat Dog before she went to work, long before I came into the picture. She even got her own Chucky doll in 1993, which I now have. I wasn't really there for this film's release, nor do I remember these shows from when they were at their height, since by the time I was gaining consciousness, the Sponge was already well underway in his world takeover. Yet I still always knew there was something extremely special about this movie, that watching it felt like echoes of a distant historic moment that I wished I could have been a part of. And to sell the film, Nickelodeon had the perfect gimmick Odorama. At participating Burger King locations, people could pick up a scratch and sniff card which they could take with them when they went to see the movie. And during the screening, a notice would flash on screen informing them to scratch off one of the symbols, which was meant to help immerse them in the film. It was such a genius marketing gimmick that it's impossible to believe it had never been done before. Because it had. The concept of scratch and sniff cards to be used during the viewing of a movie was thought up by filmmaker and gay activist John Waters for his 1981 comedy Polyester. When he learned of Odorama being used for the marketing of this movie, he felt ripped off. Though New Line Cinema, which distributed Polyester, had not renewed the copyright. So while nothing illegal happened, we're still left with an all too common case of a big studio stealing and profiting off the ideas of a gay artist who received no compensation, as Paramount considered it an homage to his work. When the film was available on DVD and VHS a few months later, the Odorama cards were also included, as a way to give people who didn't get to watch the film in theatres a chance to see what all the fuss was about. Now, I have made some very questionable purchases for this project. You have no idea how difficult it was trying to get my hands on one of these, because there are shockingly few of them still out there since the people who got them probably used them. I also don't think the UK was included in the promotion, but then again, I was too at the time. In the end, I had to buy a copy of the VHS from the States off of Etsy just so I could get one, which was the most money I spent on anything for this project. And it was for this. And it's been over 20 years, meaning I don't even know if this thing is still gonna work. But now that I had the card, the next step was finding a version of the movie with all of the Odorama stuff included, which was even more difficult. There is a video on YouTube that is a compilation of every moment where an Odorama symbol pops up on screen, so I could have taken that and edited them back into the movie. Problem solved. But then that would ruin the surprise, as I would know where every single one of them is, which defeats the purpose of this whole thing. After weeks of trying to find it to no avail, I eventually made a community post, and within hours someone had contacted me on Blue Sky, having taken it upon themselves to create their own cut of the movie with all of the Odorama stuff for me to use in this video. A massive thank you to WD03 for doing this and essentially saving the entire section of the video. Over on their channel, they make a variety of think pieces, tier lists, and discussions on topics ranging from Mario to SpongeBob to Rick and Morty. There'll be a link to them in the description, so be sure to check them out. So while I'm going through my various talking points on the movie, it'll occasionally cut to a clip of me watching it exactly as the gods and Klasky Chupo intended. Let's start wrapping this whole thing up. Okay, I have the movie with Odorama set up on the TV. I of course have my scratch and sniff card, which I really hope works, otherwise this whole thing is kind of ruined. And I have a Mountain Dew, because it has just gone summer in the UK and it is extraordinarily warm right now. Okay, this is Rugrats Go Wild, the final piece of media in the Wild Thornberrys franchise. Something that needs to be understood about this movie is how it's essentially pulling double duty, acting as a spiritual finale for both of these shows. While the Wild Thornberrys and Rugrats technically continued to release new episodes after this, that was because of Nickelodeon purposefully holding them back from airing with the rest of their respective seasons. By the time this movie was completed, neither of these shows was still in production. And now, people have made arguments that this movie takes place before Wild Thornberrys Season 5 because Eliza is back to her pre-Shane hairstyle. But I don't think it's too far-fetched to believe that sometime after he left, Eliza regained her senses and realised she maybe shouldn't have altered how she looks for the sole purpose of impressing a guy. It's also likely she recognised, after they left Alaska, that wearing her hair down all the time was not going to be practical for constantly running through the jungle. That's my 2 cents on the matter. For the purpose of this discussion, I'm gonna try and ignore as much of the Rugrats stuff as I can. We won't be discussing how this movie is secretly about Angelica and the many ways it provides some semblance of closure for those characters. That way, if I ever truly lose my mind and decide to do a retrospective on that franchise, then I won't just be repeating myself. Though that's gonna be tough, because this is not what you nor I would call a balanced crossover, as the title alone tells you exactly who the real stars of this movie are. This is not a Rugrats and Wild Thornberrys movie, it's a Rugrats movie that the Thornberrys happen to be in. I mean, the main theatrical poster doesn't even include Mary Ann, because they needed that space to tell people that Bruce Willis will be voicing Spike, which most of the film's marketing leaned on.
Did you hear about Spike? The dog? He's going to speak in English? Got so much to say.
He talks!
He's coming our way! Rugrats Go Wild, the movie!
Spike says his first word.
We gotta be there!
June 13th!
So Spike can be heard!
Hear Spike speak. Give him a treat.
Hey, Bobby, what's up? Did you hear Spike's gonna speak in the new Rugrats movie? No way! Going wild! Rugrats! Going wild! Rugrats! Going wild! Rugrats! The Rugrats Go Wild!
The first glimpse we get of any Thornberry characters is a moment towards the beginning where Tommy and Grandpa Lou are watching an episode of Animal World, something that is admittedly pretty cool since we never saw what the nature show itself actually looks like when airing on the TV. And Mary Ann was locked in for this one, cause I have no idea how she was following Nigel through all this.
This is Sir Nigel Thornberry of Sir Nigel Thornberry's Animal World.
Not counting that, it takes about 10 minutes before we actually see any of the family in earnest. But when we do finally get to those scenes, it is such a refreshing return to form, as every single problem I had with season 5 is simply gone. Which shouldn't be all too surprising, since the movie was again written by Kate Boutillier with some contributions from Monica Piper and David Regal. Oh, number 1. Alright, we're gonna find out if it's going to work. It works! Oh my god, it actually works! Oh, thank god. Oh, that was gonna be like a real downer if just like I went through all of this to finally get my hands on this card and it didn't work. Like, oh my god, like 2003, so we're talking 23 years and this thing still works? They really don't make them like they're used to anymore. So, from the Thornberrys' perspective, what's the story? Well, they are stationed on a deserted island. You'd think they'd want to avoid those after what happened last time. The reason for them being there is so Nigel and Mary Ann can attempt to film a clouded leopard. However, their intense focus on work is starting to cause a significant divide with their kids, as Debbie and Eliza begin complaining about how rarely they get to do typical family things.
You're always working. When's the last time we took a vacation?
But Debbie, we travel all over the world.
I want a family vacation. You know, where we fight over the bar of hotel soap.
And Debbie hogs all the good towels.
And we order room service.
And we do dorky family activities.
Yes! Dorky sounds really good right now.
Though, once again, these problems can all be traced back to one cause.
The Foundation is expecting that footage today, and we still haven't got it.
This narrative really does highlight a subtle problem that has always been present with the Thornberrys in a way that kind of deconstructs the original run. While they do try to spend time with each other, and I will continue fighting the claim that Nigel and Mary Ann are inattentive parents, there has always been this disconnect that only exists because of how the show is structured. As I've said, Nigel and Mary Ann leaving the kids at camp is what needs to happen for Eliza to go exploring and find animals to talk to. It is a necessary evil for the show to function, much like how for Rugrats, the parents being incapable of watching the babies for more than a few minutes at a time is the only way those stories can happen. But while we have individually explored every relationship in the family, we don't tend to see them together all that often, as the characters are always splitting off into their own little subgroups. And we've seen the show call attention to how certain pairings received more screen time than others by having the characters acknowledge it. But even with that, it was rare to see them spending time as a single unit. And like I said about the Marianne subplot in Eliza Unplugged, that is such a great thing to explore in a potential finale. But I think there could be something deeper going on here, especially from Debbie's perspective. If the show's timeline has indeed progressed as I have said, in this movie Debbie is either 17 or 18, meaning it won't be much longer until she starts thinking about leaving for college, and going off what we've seen, she will likely have her pick of any school she wants. This would fully explain her sudden desire to spend more time with her parents and do things as a family that she previously would have been actively against. From there, the Thornberrys are all split up once again, and I really appreciate how, in a movie with this many characters, nearly every family member receives their own storyline and a substantial amount of screen time. That's something I don't think the film gets a lot of credit for, because it is really well structured as a crossover. The way they achieve this is by carefully and slowly bringing these shows together. Kind of like when you get a second cat and you have to introduce them in stages so they get comfortable around each other. The main casts of each show are divided across the island, and you have multiple instances where only a few of them meet and form their own little bubbles. Then slowly, throughout the middle of the movie, all those separate bubbles are moved closer together, until the third act where they all simultaneously pop as both sides are fully exposed to each other after all that build-up, giving the whole thing this gravitas you'd want from a crossover of this magnitude. There are problems with the crossover element overall that will come up, but structurally, this is very sound. Oh, two. Peanut butter? Okay. That one's like a lot less noticeable than the strawberry. I've never actually had peanut butter, so I suppose I won't really know what it smells like. What exactly is going on in each of these bubbles, though? While continuing to search for their leopard, Marianne and Nigel decide to split up.
Dearest, I thought it was so happy. Oh, you mean to look for the leopard, don't you?
And this pretty much writes Marianne out of the movie for an extended period of time. But while it is disappointing seeing her be sidelined yet again, at least here she gets to show off a little more of her personality. With Marianne gone, Nigel stumbles across the Rugrats, but is so shocked at the discovery of babies on the island that he walks off a cliff, causing him to be struck with amnesia, and since the last thought he had was about infants, he now believes he is 3 years old, and as such will not be of any help for the time being. Nigel is such an amazing character, and these are his final moments on screen, and we spend so much of it with him not acting like himself. Even though it is obvious Tim Curry is having an absolute blast recording this.
I'm a froggy, and I'm frogging.
I fully understand why this is here from a narrative perspective, because by making Nigel utterly useless, it allows Tommy to step up and save everyone, including his hero. Because if we don't somehow take Nigel out of commission, the story is instantly resolved. But we still need him to be conscious because the babies are not going to be able to push him in the stroller, despite Tommy's excellent upper body strength. Eliza heads off into the jungle to try and find the leopard for her parents, a subtle example of her and Debbie being on the same page, as there is hardly any conflict between them in this movie besides a few moments of minor sibling bickering. That's really nice to see, and another example of their development from the first movie sticking. When she leaves, Darwin initially stays behind as Debbie starts bossing him around, mainly making him paint her nails. Well, I did say I wanted more Debbie and Darwin interactions. This catches the eye of Angelica, who fears that she is losing her touch when the babies disobey her and thus wants Debbie to teach her how to be more bossy. While this leads to some admittedly fun interactions, since Angelica is the only main character from Rugrats able to actually interact with any of the Thornberrys, I am not a fan of how it suggests that the two are essentially clones of each other, that Debbie is merely a grown-up Angelica. It not only ignores that Debbie is a character who greatly evolved over time, but has to significantly dumb her down in order for her to buy Angelica's island princess story, forgetting that Debbie is secretly the smartest member of her family.
Is that a CD player? Do
Yeah, only the best. You know an awful lot for an island girl.
Well, see, a TV washed up on the beach once, and the Island King made the whole tribe watch it.
Cool!
Though all of this is forgiven because of what the movie ends up doing with Debbie later during Act 3. Oh, 3. I'm like over the moon that this actually works. I don't think I'm actually going to get over that the entire time I'm watching this film. After running off in terror from taking one look at Angelica, Darwin finds Eliza and tries to inform her of these events, which is actually the first time he speaks at all in the film. 32 minutes in. But this is interrupted when the pair happen across Spike the dog, who, thanks to the presence of Eliza, is now able to talk, being voiced by Bruce Willis, who gives a pretty good performance, to be honest, considering the material he's been given. My conspiracy theory is having Spike talk is the only reason this film exists, because they wanted to have him speak, and the only way to do that is, put him next to Eliza Thornberry. And since you're going to have Eliza, you do kind of have to include the rest of the family, so it became a Rugrats crossover. Also, love Darwin constantly insulting him, putting the chimp's snobbish behaviour on full display. There's also a pretty fun moment when Spike begins catastrophizing, much like Darwin would during the original run, only for him to be the one to snap the dog out of it. Spike is having trouble locating the babies due to problems with his nose, as Eliza promises to help him, though she is under the impression that they are looking for puppies and not human infants. A misunderstanding that is cleared up very quickly after they encounter the clouded leopard the Thornberrys have been looking for, who is named Siri, voiced by Chrissy Hind. Also, this is the most nitpicky of nitpicks, but clouded leopards are not purple. I know that is such an inconsequential detail, but the Wild Thornberrys was partly envisioned as an educational show. The goal of the original run was to present nature and all of these animals Eliza interacted with as accurately as possible. So this kind of inaccuracy does stick out, especially when we have seen so many leopards in this show before, including the first movie, but Siri looks nothing like them. Though I suppose any semblance of realism was already out the window when Spike and her partake in a counterpart duet, reminding us this is a Rugrats movie, meaning we've got to force in a bunch of songs. By the end of the first movie, and obviously Rugrats Go Paris, you just kind of buy that these movies are musicals, and, you just accept that. So when you hear in the third movie that Spike's gonna get his own song, you're just kind of like, yeah, sure, fine. But then during the song, you just have Eliza Thornberry standing in the background, and it makes you recognise that, hey, it's kind of weird that the Rugrats movies are musicals. Thankfully, the Thornberrys themselves are mostly kept out of these because, well...
You know my dreams. You hear my screams. Even when my soul's like in Africa.
Even though having an animated musical featuring Tim Curry and not giving him a fully dedicated number should be considered a crime. That is the fatal flaw with this film, that no matter how much it tries to, they cannot escape. These shows are not compatible. The whole appeal with an old school crossover is to see the main characters from both these properties interacting, but the Rugrats are babies, making any interaction with the Thornberrys incredibly limited. That might be why they thought to include Susie in the adventure this time around, just so there was someone with Tommy and the others who was able to talk with the non-babies. There are promotional images for this film featuring Tommy and Eliza together, but they don't actually formally meet at any point during the movie because what would they do? They can't speak to each other. They don't really mesh well comedically either. The Wild Thornberrys, as I see it, is quite a highbrow series. Its humour comes from sharp dialogue, witty exchanges. It's quite dry and cynical a lot of the time. Rugrats was also a smartly written show, but it is about babies, so it's full of toilet humour and gross out, which was only amplified in the movies. And since this is a Rugrats movie first and foremost, that's all very prevalent here. I don't want to say they drag the Thornberrys down to their level, because that implies the writing of Rugrats is of a lower quality, which it isn't. they just have different sensibilities. But there are a lot of things in this movie that, for me personally, are quite difficult to sit through because it's not my kind of humour. It's a Rugrats movie. There is one moment that really sums up the experience I had watching this movie. Oh, 4. No. Oh no, I know. No, oh! Oh god. I don't wanna, I really do not want to do this. Oh, that is vile. Oh my god. There's only one subplot free from all these issues, and that is the interactions between Donnie and Chucky, as the pair essentially switch places for a while after Chucky gets separated from the group and Donnie steals his clothes. This situation allows Chucky to find more confidence and bravery when he sticks up for an animal who was getting picked on. But that's not what we're here for. This movie handles Donnie exceptionally well, far better than the previous Thornberrys movie did, because they found a way to have him meaningfully contribute to the story without losing his chaotic gremlin energy. Like I said, he steals Chucky's clothes and then tries to impersonate him. And since Donnie doesn't speak English anyway, and is the closest Thornberry in age to the Rugrats, he does get to interact with the babies, which is a lot of fun. But outside these moments of comedy, we also see this very noble and heroic side to him, as he rescues the babies and Nigel from the leopard. Even though he doesn't really get to interact with the rest of his family, this might be his best showing, outside of the obvious, and potentially the only aspect this film does better than the Wild Thornberrys movie. Well, besides the visuals. I thought the previous film was stunning already, despite it being fairly obvious to tell where corners were cut, but this is on a whole other level. We once again have Dima Milanichev as the movie's production designer, as well as all the same background designers and painters from the previous movie, so the props and environments are all the same stellar quality. What steals the show here is the character animation, once again handled by the talented folks at Sunwoo Entertainment. There is so much fantastic character acting in this film, with constant high-fidelity movement and how far they really push the expressions. That Rugrats budget really did wonders, because this is hands down the best the Thornberrys have ever looked. When it's not being gross, this movie is such a feast for the eyes. Whether it's some utterly breathtaking scenery or more ambitious cinematography, it's always doing something new and interesting. Oh, 5? That's a lot better. That is a lot better than the previous one. The first 2/3 of the film are not amazing. Much like Sir Nigel and Season 5, there are some really good ideas here, but many are brought down by really bad execution that has a tendency to disregard aspects of the original run in order to make the stories work. And again, even though it has a great structure, these shows simply don't fit together. But then all those stories and various character pairings begin to collide, as Eliza, Darwin and Spike run into Debbie and Angelica, who upon hearing of the leopard steals the Convy's bathysphere to go find the babies. Also, how did that fit in the Convy? Because the Convy is 2 stories, and I mean, yes, they've had vehicles and stuff in there before, but a submarine? During this, Angelica sets off a flare that tears a hole in the Convy's flotation device, causing it to sink. Angelica retrieves the babies from a cave after they escape Siri, who entirely disappears from the movie at this point. But of course, they're babies and don't know how to drive a submarine, causing them to crash and become stuck on the ocean floor, as the movie stops taking inspiration from Thornberry Island and starts throwing a little bit of reef grief in there. But if you're going to recycle episodes from the original run, might as well pick the very best ones. By this point, both these worlds have truly fused together, as all the Rugrat parents run into Marianne with the kids meeting up soon after, as everyone now must work together to save the babies and Nigel, who is back to normal.
Well, dad normal anyway.
And the last act of the film pretty much saves the entire thing, as the final 20 or so minutes are near perfect and do provide a decent amount of closure, especially on the Thornberry side. And that's because of how it closes out Debbie's story, which makes everything we had to go through in order to get here entirely worth it in my opinion. Debbie's actions leading to the convoy sinking feels like it could be a direct allusion to Flood Warning, which while not the first episode produced, did mark the beginning of her series-long arc. Written by Tom Stern, the story follows the family having to survive on the savannah in Tanzania when Debbie loses the convoy after convincing her parents to let her drive it. A situation she feels immense guilt over, even sneaking off to try and find it by herself during the night, where she runs into Eliza as the kids have to escape a pair of lionesses, eventually leading to them finding the convoy. And now she has essentially lost it again, though rather than moping about it like she did for most of that episode, she takes charge when it comes to fixing her mistake. Over the first 40 or so episodes, Debbie remains a very much what you see is what you get kind of character. She's an angst-filled teen who remains emotionally closed off and rarely allows herself to be sincere, with the only true exception being her special bond with Donnie. She has her own struggles and a lot of great moments, but she doesn't really change much as a character until episode 33, Polar Opposites, where she gets a job at a diner to earn money to buy a t-shirt worn by Despero Dean, which is a story about her learning the value of hard work. That all changed with episode 41, Black and White and Mom All Over, coincidentally the first episode of the series to be coloured digitally. Written by Alea Horwitz and directed by Kathy Mulcahy, the Thornberrys are in China where Eliza finds a lost panda cub named Shisho, who ends up imprinting onto Debbie, seeing her as his mother. Despite her reluctance, Debbie does decide to look after the cub, mainly to prove Eliza wrong after her sister claims that she can't take care of anything. But after some growing pains, she does start to settle into the role. During the climax of the episode, the characters are hit by a violent storm as Debbie truly steps up in her responsibility, launching a flare to guide Eliza and Darwin back to camp, getting them all inside the convoy and keeping them safe till the storm dissipates. And when Shisho is reunited with his actual mother, Debbie is kind of sad about it.
I hate to say this, but you weren't bad at it. In fact, you did a pretty good job taking care of all of us.
Well, don't tell anyone, okay? If Mom and Dad find out, they might get used to the idea.
And from here, we start slowly seeing a shift in Debbie, as she truly comes into her own as a proactive and responsible young woman, which also helps her become more well-rounded overall. She'd always been resourceful and, of course, determined, but now we see that put to good use. And it's all this development that made her my favourite character in the show. The movie deepened her relationship with Eliza and brought something new to their dynamic that they tried to explore in season 5, which did show a significant amount of emotional growth for her, but it wasn't really the ending to her story. This is perhaps the worst Debbie has ever messed up, but when everyone else starts to panic, she comes up with the solution and puts the plan into motion, once more taking responsibility by fixing her mistake, patching up the flotation device, thus allowing everyone else to raise the convoy. With the moment placing the spotlight on her and Marianne's relationship, something we haven't seen be properly addressed in a long while. It doesn't have the same weight as Eliza's conclusion from the first film, but it is this meaningful interaction that speaks volumes of how far Debbie has grown from where we first met her.
Debbie? Don't worry, Mom. I'm on it.
And there is a lot more to this sequence. I complained about the amnesia plot, but now that we have Nigel back, he also gets to shine. The way he does his best to keep all the babies entertained to distract them from how they are running out of oxygen, and he doesn't know if they'll even survive. It's this tender moment that truly grounds him again and shows his strength as a character, something that we were sorely missing during the middle of the movie. I'm gonna miss these guys. It's like, I've essentially, had this show as part of my life for the last 2 to 3 months. I'm about to go through some major withdrawal. I'm actually getting a little emotional. Oh my god. With the convoy now up and running again, they are able to retrieve the submarine as Nigel and the kids witness the majesty of a giant squid, allowing Nigel one more chance to show why he is such a great naturalist.
You see, children, the giant squid has never been seen alive before. I suppose this marvel of nature will be our little secret. What do you say? Couldn't have said it better myself.
They resurface as all the families have an emotional reunion on the beach, with the Thornberrys being saved for last, as the strong love between them is reinforced one more time with a bit of nice reflection from Nigel and Marianne.
I hated the thought of our last family meal being shortchanged because we had to go find a leopard.
Your father's right. We lost sight of what's important. Spending time together. Okay, everyone. Let's pack up. We're going on vacation.
The movie draws to a close with everyone enjoying their time together on the Lipschitz cruise as a nice little victory lap. Even though I'm fairly sure the events of this movie, or the Thornberrys in general, never get referenced in All Grown Up, I do like to imagine that from this point on, the Thornberrys, the Pickles, the Finsters, and the DeVilles all take yearly joint vacations together. Oh! Oh my god! I love that that's the last one. I love that that's the last one. I don't love the smell of it, but I love that that is the last one on the card. That is, like, so fitting. With how much of an undertaking this movie was, a lot ended up getting left on the cutting room floor, including multiple extra songs, which led to me discovering that Nigel actually did have his own number at one point called Higgledy Piggledy. And this is very interesting because I don't think Nigel has amnesia during this, since he is still displaying his vast knowledge of nature and is acting as more of a guide to the Rugrats. His clumsiness seems to be entirely intentional, as he is likely trying to keep the baby's spirits up during this scary situation, which also justifies it being a song.
Listen up. Here's what you do when you're in a pickle and not sure where you are. You may look silly like a Daffy Down dilly, but it'll always get you far. It's magic.
From this, we can see a version of this story where Nigel gets to be helpful for a few scenes before he gets knocked out. Doesn't explain why he seems not to recognise Donnie in this sequence, but I do really wish they kept this one. It might be my favourite song they made for the movie. I fully acknowledge that Rugrats Go Wild overall is not very good. I've outlined a lot of pretty big flaws with not only its execution, but its very premise. Even with that though, I still can't help but love it. Because as bloated and rushed and downright uncomfortable as it is, against all odds, it does provide a lot of closure for both these shows. Like I said, at its core, this film is about fixing issues with the Thornberrys as a family unit, fully deconstructing the formula the original run was built on by exploring this unspoken disconnect that has always existed between them, and resolving it. There's a good handful of charming moments, Debbie gets a nice cap to a series-long emotional journey, Donnie is at his best, and it does a much better job representing everything that made the Wild Thornberrys what it was than anything from season 5. Could they have improved on some stuff? Absolutely. But for the constraints they had to work with, I do think this is a satisfying note to close out on.
Did you hear about Rugrats?
Wild Thornberrys too? They're in the same movie!
Together.
When is it due?
June 13th! They're marooned on an island. How will they get along? Look, there's tons of new games.
Online.
At rugratsgowild.com.
I can't wait.
It's gonna be great.
How can the Rugrats and Thornberrys both be in the same movie? It's impossible! It's cool!
Going wild, Rugrats. Going wild, berries. Going wild. Together, the Rugrats go
When it debuted in June of 2003, Rugrats Go Wild did okay. On a budget of 25 million, it made just over 55 million. Nowhere near a financial failure, but a definite step down from both the previous Rugrats movies and the Wild Thornberrys movie, with this being the final theatrical film by Klasky Csupo. The Rugrats would continue on for a few more years through various spin-offs, some more successful than others, but this would mark the end of the line for the Wild Thornberrys. The series entered 2003 at the very height of its popularity, but in the span of only a few months, it went from one of the staples of Nickelodeon to a show people didn't want to talk about. However, despite how I might have framed it for the purpose of giving this video a narrative, it had nothing to do with the quality of the show itself, and the disappointing return on Go Wild kinda proves that. What was billed as this huge event bringing together two of the biggest cartoons at the time ended up as the first indicator that the golden age of Nickelodeon was pretty much over, with this movie sort of acting as a send-off to that first generation of Nicktoons. Audiences were moving on, and while the channel still boasted a solid animated lineup, the focus of the network was shifting away from the innovation and variety they once prided themselves on to throwing all their eggs into one basket, slowly causing them to lose their identity and making the idea of Nicktoons a thing of the past. The Wild Thornberrys ending was a sign of the times. To Nickelodeon, having a show like that didn't make sense anymore, regardless of how popular it was, so they got rid of it. And because it was stuck between the pre-SpongeBob and post-SpongeBob eras, people are aware of it, but they don't really remember it. Not fully, which has led to its modern reputation as one of the lesser Nicktoons. And hopefully me dedicating this much time to it has allowed you to see what the series actually is, and how important it was. Because this show has always been special to me, and it deserves to be remembered as one of the most innovative and charming cartoons to ever come out of Nickelodeon. But when talking about a series as massive and successful as the Wild Thornberrys was, the topic of a nostalgia-fueled reboot or revival does have to be addressed. And it is something I want to talk about because throughout making this entire project, my perspective on this has completely changed.
If this is what you can do without your powers, you have a greater destiny than I've even known.
I went into this project with a firm stance that a Wild Thornberrys continuation could not work, for fairly obvious reasons. How can you possibly make this show without Tim Curry or Tom Kane? It can't be done, right? But then I actually sat down and really paid attention while watching the original run and slowly came to the realization that the world kind of needs the Wild Thornberrys right now. There are no cartoons out there providing everything this did. Going to great lengths to humanize animals, to really show the devastating effects of man's interference, while also educating about different cultures across the globe and showing how all life is connected because we share this one planet, which we should be taking far better care of. It was about the importance of community, about the power of caring and seeing the value in every living thing, about sticking up for what was right against insurmountable odds. The show had something to say back then, and said it without pulling any punches, but it could have so much more to say now. People look at shows from this era and say, well, that can't be made today, but the Wild Thornberrys could and should be made today. Of all the nostalgic 90s and 2000s properties to revisit, this is the only one that needs to come back. Which is also the reason it won't happen, especially with everything that's gone on with Paramount and Nickelodeon in recent years. Still, I would like to give my full pitch for how I would do a modern Wild Thornberrys continuation. Also, I don't have the money to commission someone to create a visual representation of these ideas, so I'm just gonna keep using footage from the old episodes, meaning you really only have to listen to this section. The new series is titled Eliza Thornberry's Animal World, calling back to the very first pitch for the original show. This revival picks up about 15 years after the events of the movie, And now in their 50s, Nigel and Marianne have made the difficult decision to retire from fieldwork, moving to England after Nigel is once again offered a professorship at Oxford, which he takes this time because he wants to pass on everything he's learned and inspire the next generation of naturalists. Though the pair are still very active in fighting for animal rights. Thus Eliza, now in her late 20s, has of course taken up the mantle and started her own nature show. However, she doesn't work for the Foundation, thankfully. Instead, she uploads her documentaries to the internet, essentially becoming a wildlife influencer. Now, that word is going to scare people, but it's all tied into Eliza's arc from the original show. The movie was about her understanding that she could do so much more with her powers, and that is what this new series focuses on. Eliza is now a world-renowned documentarian because she seems to understand wildlife better than any human ever has, and she uses her platform to advocate for the animals, showing her audience how every single one of them have their own unique personality while also exposing the threats they face. Eliza used to simply talk to animals, but now she is giving them a voice, all while still maintaining her secret. Much of the original series was Eliza being told that she was too young to do anything, so I want to see her now that she can do all that stuff. But Nigel couldn't do it alone, and neither can she, which is why Debbie is her camera operator, driver, editor, and social media manager. And now I can already hear people questioning the idea that Debbie would willingly continue this life of constant travel as an adult after she spent most of the series complaining about it. But towards the end of the original run, there are many examples of Debbie revealing that she does in fact care about the animals as much as the rest of the family, making it entirely plausible that she would want to try and help them when she grows up. This is also playing on a subplot from an early episode of the original run called The Flight of Donnie, where Marianne is sick, so Debbie has to take on her responsibilities and actually gets very into it. So it's not too hard to believe that after college and spending a few years living in the city, she would decide to follow Eliza into the family business. Plus it kind of has to be Debbie, since she's the only one who knows Eliza's secret, because we're not adding any new main characters. Eliza's not gonna have a daughter who somehow inherits her ability, because that would destroy the entire canon of the original show. Eliza earned her powers. Darwin and Donnie are, of course, there too. Darwin is essentially Eliza's co-host for her videos, and it's mostly still the same dynamic, but Eliza does listen to him on occasion now. The only character I can't really figure out is Donnie, because you do want to see what happens to him when he gets older, but then there's the issue of having him actually speaking English, at which point it wouldn't really feel like Donnie anymore. Though I'm sure the people who would actually be making the show would be able to figure that out. They drive around in the Combi 2.0, which is pretty much the same as the one from the old series with a few technological upgrades. This one has cup holders. As for Nigel and Marianne, while they are present, their roles are heavily reduced. They would appear in every episode, video calling the kids, and maybe they visit or get a subplot every so often, but they are mostly on the sidelines. And the reason for this is because if we keep the screen time to a minimum, it means we could potentially get Tim Curry. This is one of his most cherished roles, and even if it doesn't quite sound the same, if he wants to do it, let him. However, if we absolutely have to get a sound alike, it won't be too distracting since he'd only have a few lines per episode. So long as it's better than how he sounds in All-Star Brawl.
You, sir, are a despicable excuse for a petrol station owner.
But while we can potentially get around Nigel, we would need to recast Darwin, because you can't sideline him as he is Eliza's best friend who is always by her side. Tom Kane brought so much to Darwin, and it would be difficult handing that character to anyone else. But if we're acknowledging how important it is for this show to return, that is simply a bridge we have to cross. And from there, it's pretty much more of the Wild Thornberrys. The family travelling the globe, helping animals, learning about other cultures, fighting off poachers, all the same stuff as before, just a tad more modernised. We'll certainly be revisiting some previous locations and catching up with Eliza's old friends, both human and animal. There'll of course be an episode revisiting Rebecca's herd, with Phaedra now being the matriarch. I do have this very specific idea for the first season finale, where the Thornberrys are documenting themselves trying to take down this massive poaching operation, which builds to this reveal that it's Kip and Biederman running the whole thing. It's this huge moment where Eliza has this final confrontation with her old foes now as an adult, and uses all the evidence she's collected against them to ensure they are locked up for good this time. Wouldn't that be the most hype thing ever? Also, the series would make it fully canon that Debbie is bisexual. But all of this is such a pipe dream, and the chances of us getting any legitimate continuation of the Thornberrys, even if it was something like a graphic novel, are slim to none, just based on how Nickelodeon treats the show and how little demand there is for something like that. Besides Nigel being in All-Star Brawl, which I've already mentioned, the most recent thing to happen with these characters was Eliza being added to the roster of Nickelodeon Extreme Tennis, where Lacey Chabert reprised her role for the first time in over 20 years, yet she sounds like she hasn't aged a single day.
I won? I gotta tell Mom and Dad.
And recently, it was revealed the game is getting ported to actual gaming consoles, which I might honestly pick up just for Eliza. With how successful and expansive the Nickelodeon games have become over the last few years, I do think it's possible that the Thornberrys could start appearing again. If they ever end up doing, for example, another kart racer, Eliza and Donnie would likely be near the top of the list of newcomers to add based on the shows not yet represented. But that's the very last thing I could possibly say about this show. So, I guess we can wrap this up now. It feels incredibly surreal to have finally done this project that I've had on the back burner for the better part of 2 years. Wild Thornberrys good, actually. Go watch it. I'd recommend stopping after the movie, but if you're feeling brave, you could watch Season 5 and the Rugrats crossover, just be willing to accept the consequences of that decision. I hope you enjoyed this overly long dissection of a nearly 30-year-old cartoon, and if you did, maybe consider subscribing. This is pretty much what I do around here, so, options on the table. Please leave your own thoughts on the Wild Thornberrys in the comment section down below. Do you like it just as much as me? Has anything I've said caused you to look at it a little differently? Maybe you have your own show from childhood that you feel has been misrepresented online in recent years. And if you're feeling especially generous, I also have a Patreon, where you can see new videos early, as well as the occasional exclusive bonus video. That's really the best way to help make more projects like this possible, though I understand if you can't for whatever reason. Until we meet again, I'm Jake, and thank you so much for visiting my Mind Palace. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go keep spreading the word about our bisexual Lord and Saviour, Debbie Thornberry.
Our family is the wildest life I know.
Well, naturally. They're Thornberrys, aren't they?